I'm excited, though, because we have a guest today who's a great supporter of the show financially and through the chat and has talked kindly of me, which is the most important thing, right? But no, member of the community, always a pleasure to see him in the chat. And I know that he has some very interesting things to say on AI. So Spiro, thank you so much. So happy for you to be here today. How you doing this great day? Hopefully you're staying safe from the insurrections.
Well, you see, I'm up in Canada and all my mooses, all the meese up here, which is a flock of mooses, they're all protecting me. And I've got a wall of maple syrup around my igloo. So anything you say to me bounces off that, sticks to you. So brother, I am good. Mr. Rob Knorr, how the hell are you tonight?
I'm doing great. I don't know if you can tell I was having a little fun there.
Oh,
I love watching when the chickens come home to roost. It's always fun to watch. So, this is a big argument I've had with these people for 6 months and, coming to fruition. But I am praying that everyone stays safe out there, even though optically it's a victory. If these lunatics continue their riot, I don't want it to happen. I really don't. But hey, we'll keep monitoring that as we have this conversation. Now, can you tell everyone sort of the general thesis of what we're going to talk about tonight with the assumption, as I told you this? So I think many people in my audience are probably the same level when it comes to AI as me, which is I didn't know to right click something to save a picture yesterday. I had to ask for help for it. So Spiro well knows that during this conversation, he's dealing with an idiot in me here. But can you explain sort of generally overall what you're going to talk to us about today?
Yeah. So let me start with this. So I've got two things that I want to make sure that I cover. So first of all, you don't want to leave. I'm going to be breaking some things that the one and only Mr. Andrew Wilson has offered kindly to have me on his show twice. And I was not prepared to present the information or make the arguments. I've been working behind the scenes for about 2 years, even before I started seriously streaming. And I'm finally ready to blow the lid on some of the stuff that's going on in tech and the virus, the societal virus that has infiltrated tech. And as far as I know, I'm the only person, I am actually willing to say this, I'm the only person who has put together the information I have to present this case. So we're going to talk a bit about how the same kind of idiocy that you're seeing with like the things that instituted the riots today, the insurrection, let's call it by what it is, shall we? Those same kinds of things have played a role in the tech industry and have made it so that things are bad. The other thing I want to make sure that I get clear is that I will grift on your behalf. I'm going to ignore literally everyone in chat because they're all a bunch of losers, unless you do a super chat or you donate. That is the only way that I will accept your existence. So you better get in those donations. Otherwise, you just don't exist to me. As far as I'm concerned, it's just Rob and I having a nice little chat, just him and I. Screw the rest of you. There's your grift, all right?
Yeah, that's great. And I also will ignore then unless there's a super chat, which I usually do because it's rude to your guest to not do anyways. But super chat will make an exception for.
Yes.
So start us down the road here. How did you get involved? Like your career is something how you became involved with this, or is it a hobby? How did you start to get involved in like finding out the information that you're going to disclose here this evening?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been programming for 25 some odd years. I started out when I was 17 because I'm a video game person. We're going to talk a little bit about video games. I'll integrate that too. And I had to leave home when I was 17 due to my own safety. I literally couldn't stay home. So I didn't finish high school. I did a construction job. And I would do 8 to 16 hours a day, depending on the location of the site. Then I would come home and I would work for free building websites to get experience until about 2 years later, I finally started getting paid for it. And now here I am. This industry has given me the opportunity to be completely self-taught, to make my own way. I have a kid and a wife that I adore, much like yourself. I'm a family man, and I'm very grateful and blessed to have that. And so when I see my industry getting completely fucked by the idiocy that happens out there in society that yourself, Andrew, Rattlesnake, all of you fight against, and I see all of that play out in my little domain, I'm like, no, fuck that. I'm going to say something. And unfortunately, it means that I've been blocked by some rather big people. It's been hard to find work. It's becoming somewhat stressful. So I try and do the streaming thing to kind of like, make up for something, although that's not honestly being quite successful. But I don't do it really for the money. I do it because I really care about this and I don't want to see it destroyed. And I think if you would agree with me, Rob, when it comes to code and software and hardware, when you put all that together, you would agree with me that these things have a significant impact on the world today as a whole. Like they affect your life down to like your little stupid heads up display dashboard in your car runs on this stuff, right? Like it's not small.
And it's like, not only that, but like, to me, the control of information is so important. And so when I think of coding, the first thing as a streamer that comes to my mind is like algorithms. And it's not even just as a streamer. Like my parents aren't very technologically inclined. And they were like, how come we never see that like you're on? And I was like, well, I was explaining to them, like, what are the chances that when you watch something online, what are the chances? Even hell, back in the day, remember the old TV guide? For those that are an old guy like me, you had this TV guide, right? Like most of the time, if you didn't know something was on, you flip through the channel. So whatever they were broadcasting is what you could see. Algorithms are like that. It literally can. Literally, it's no exaggeration to say it could shake nations to the core if you just control the flow of information. And that's certainly, I think I'm looking at it at a very surface level. I think you're going to be able to tell us, like, right down to the devices you use, your fridge that's got like, programming in it, like what that will be able to do, your stupid ass Alexa that you have, sitting in your bathroom, what that could do. So go ahead and jump right in. I'll leave you control because I know you have a lot to say. So I'll chime in if necessary. But just jump in, man. I'm excited to hear.
All right. So let's cover a few surface level things, and then this will lead into AI. The explanation of AI is super simple. If I was just here to explain AI, I would be here for like 5 minutes and then I'd be out of here. But I'm breaking news here that I don't think anybody else is covering. So I'm going to lay out a little bit of a precursor, and then we'll just dive in. I've also prepared some questions. I want to engage chat. I want to engage you, etc. Just to kind of dovetail onto that point that you just described there, which is kind of like the history of things and whatnot, and the way that devices are. I do a daily tech news stream. It's on my YouTube live, and I literally every weekday I spend about an hour going over news. I'm up to 60 episodes right now, and there's 2 episodes that stand out in particular to me. One where I covered an issue where Bosch dishwashers, I'm not even joking, could not perform their basic dishwashing operations because of an over-the-air software update. Just this week, or maybe the end of last week, the Sonos Bluetooth wireless speakers could be remotely hijacked so they could play any sound or any type of music or whatever that a hacker wanted. So we're talking about like even the most minuscule aspect of your life. If you have a device near you, this stuff impacts you. So let's jump right the hell in, Rob and chat. And remember, I don't give a shit about your opinion unless you're fucking, donating. All right. Would you say as a whole, and I'm being general here, you can use any metrics you like to answer this question. Does not matter the metrics you go by. Would you say that software, websites, video games, hardware in general has gotten better, worse, or is neutral compared to, say, 20 years ago?
In most ways, I would say that it's gotten worse in the sense of, like, if I could compare close to apples, so like a game, the entertainment on the games I used to play, I find myself when I'm trying to play a game, it's almost always a game from 15 years ago, right? Like I'm playing the first Halo, or I'm playing like, original Call of Duties and shit. It feels like that it's just stagnated, that they basically just put like a shiny new interface or shiny new graphics, but the actual things you're using it for seems to have gotten worse.
Yes. Your intuition is spot on, and I would probably argue that most of chat, even though I'm not paying attention to them, would argue the same thing. Things are generally getting worse. Here's the thing: I think most people, this is why I do what I do. Most people who are not in tech don't even know how to describe how it's worse. Consumers don't understand, right? So they actually, as a matter of fact, I would even go so far as to say, as consumers have been desensitized. They're like, well, that's just the way it is. I open up an app, on my phone and it crashes and it's slow and this website sucks. This video game sucks. And like, yeah, they sold it this way and I paid like $80 for it, but I didn't really and it's just the way it is. And some people might even excuse it. Some consumers might excuse it and go, oh, well, I mean, this stuff must be complicated, like this must be the best it can be, and so on and so forth. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. That what's actually happened is that the IT industry has basically neutered their own ability to produce anything of quality. And that's why you see nothing but more ads, more subscriptions, and more selling of you as the data, because these companies don't know how to sell anything that you're actually willing to pay money for. And so they have to resort to these other tactics. So your intuition about things getting worse are generally true. I'm actually going to prove it to you right now because I told you I have come with receipts. So let's get into it because I've been building this up for 2 fucking years and it's about fucking time. All right, let's go. So one thing I want to state, I have pre-read everything just to make sure that I'm terms of service friendly because I'm also a streamer. So I understand there are certain things that I can't say, but they are very relevant. So one of the things that I do on my streams, so hopefully that shows up. You might have seen this before in the past if you've been around. This is a 404 page not found. I typically use this. It's called an HTTP status code, which is you've gone somewhere that the internet cannot serve to you, right? And so that's called a 404. So I'm sure Rob will figure this out because with this boomer tech, okay,
we're nailing it. Yeah,
we're there. AI clearly is running the show here. so this is what I use in place of a term that would mean that maybe someone lost their life. Let's say, right? It's a terms of service friendly way. It has become a part of my nomenclature on my streams. If I happen to slip out the term 404, you know that I mean it in that way. Context will give you, what you need to know. Just so you know, I also have a massive list of articles, mostly scientific, academic, statistical. I go over them all the time. This is just one tab of many tabs that I have. I'm not done. This is just the Daily Tech News Stream. I'm not joking when I say that I have receipts to back up just about everything I say. Now, having said that,
now, real quick, I say this real quick. If you need, I think you could share screen through StreamYards. I'm not sure. You should have permissions to do that. We would be able to see whatever you're showing bigger because I could set it up. See if that works for you. If not, no big deal.
I'm going to do it right now.
Let's see if it works. I can make us smaller now because I'm such a tech whiz.
Let's get AI to solve this for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am sharing on StreamYard.
There we go. How's that?
Perfect. Awesome. That's way better.
I think everyone will be able to read it better. Yeah.
Way better. Okay. Awesome. Perfect. Okay. So you don't need to read all the stuff. I'm just showing that I have put in a ton of time and effort and organized everything. This list, you can see the scroll tab, and this is just one tab. There's lots, right? Okay. So let me get started with something here just before we start. So what happened, right? Like what happened with you said it yourself, Rob. Some of the games you'd play, like Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, Halo, GoldenEye 007, Mario N64. I think video games are a canary in a coal mine for where software is headed in general. Video games tend to push the envelope. There are exceptions to that rule, but generally speaking, if you're looking at video games, they tend to be the most, edgy in terms of tech. And right. So what the hell happened? Like what? And so I'm going to show you the first thing. So Rob, I want you to tell me, I'm going to just quickly read this out. And since you're a master debater, okay,
we'll try,
see if you can spot the logical fallacy. This guy is an AI machine learning expert in the field. Okay. He's a programmer. So this is what he says. And this is from today, by the way. I just found this today before the stream. This encapsulates the thinking of programmers and managers and executives in the tech space today. A friend told me somebody's code was trash. I agreed. I mentioned that he was making $50,000 a month thanks to that trashy code. My friend couldn't get past the quality of the code. Nothing else mattered to him. It was bad code. Anyone could look at it and see it was written by someone who didn't know much. And yet the same ugly duct tape code was making bank. I think too many people fixate on too much on the how and forget that outcomes are all that matter. This is very common among those who have spent a long time doing things by the book and learning proper ways. Of course, writing good code increases the chances of having good outcomes, but in my opinion, the result matters the most. I would take one successful, poorly written project over 1,000 unreleased Academy Award worthy projects every day of the week and twice on weekends. Rob, any logical fallacies you can spot there?
It's outcome bias, right? Right. Where the argument is because this succeeded in some metric, the outcome of it, we could dispense with your truthful claim that it's actually bad on its merits.
Right. That's exactly right. And I get this all the time from people who I've debated. I had a debate one time with somebody online here on X. We had a debate about a particular programming paradigm. I said, why would you do it this way? You're just obfuscating to get to the same end goal. And he said, well, do you have any data to back up that my way is bad? I presented data. He said, well, it's not peer reviewed enough for me. I said, where's your data? And his response was, my outcomes, though. My outcomes are that I've worked at many Fortune 500 companies and my code has worked. And so therefore, it good for me, so it good dough. That's the argument.
And I'll just last night, for people that watched me last night, this is the argument that I have all the time when it comes to corruption at the FBI. I say the FBI is corrupt. My opponent says no. I say, here's my evidence that it is. And they'll say, yes, but the FBI didn't charge that. The outcome was that those, and that's also an appeal to authority, but though the outcome wasn't that anyone at the FBI was charged, the outcome wasn't that Hillary's team was charged with colluding with or FARA violations. Therefore, they must have done things legally. It's not looking at the actual issue. It's saying that there is an authority or there is an outcome. Therefore, because of that, I dispense with your argumentation.
Yep. How many times have we watched Andrew or Rattlesnake have very similar debates on principle, where they're up against leftists who essentially says, well, my outcomes, though, my preferences because of outcomes of those preferences, my preferences, though, my outcomes, though. It's exactly the same thinking. So right away, this is an intro into how these programmers think. This is a prevalent mindset, but I'm not only going to show you that this is a prevalent mindset, I'm going to show you how this mindset has infected the very way that people program these days. And you don't have to know a thing about programming. I'm going to demonstrate it to you simply based on logical paradigms about like what you would expect a programmer to be capable of doing. All right. Now, I just want to make sure that people understand that they are not alone. If you're frustrated with the state of software, websites, hardware, etc., it is not just you. I'm going to prove it right now. I have data to back this up. So just real quick here, there is a survey that I've pulled up here that I've been holding on to. It's a 2024 report about consumer frustrations with regards to software failures. You're not alone. Many people are affected by outages, by disruptions, by bugs, by lag. There's e-commerce studies where, like on e-commerce websites, anything less than a particular amount of seconds means that they're going to jump ship, which means you lose revenue because customers just don't want to wait around, waiting to hit that purchase button. Like all kinds of studies have been done to prove that consumers are generally just frustrated with the stuff that they're using. And just to go back to the video game analogy, Rob or anyone in chat, you do have to super chat it. Have you ever played Doom?
Oh,
Original
yes.
Doom.
I'm old enough that I played Wolfenstein and was excited when Doom came out. That's how old I am. So
perfect. Excellent. I'm going to show you now what's happened with the software industry in comparison to Doom. So in my next article here, okay, the web is doomed. Average page is now as big as the DOS classic, Doom. Now, would you say that Doom has more interactivity and more complexity than your average web page does today?
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, just to age myself, I remember I used to have, it was called a 32X that hooked on the top of your Sega. And that was like a big deal because Doom, when you played it on shittier platforms, it was like super glitchy. So I just had access. I didn't have like a PC or anything. So that was cutting edge technology that required an add-on to your console to be able to play properly.
That's right. Yep. Now, I did a little bit of math here. To run Doom, the classic Doom, you needed 4 megabytes of RAM on a 33 megahertz processor with a 33 kbps modem. That would be kind of like the standard kind of thing you would have at the time when Doom came out. You didn't actually even need all of that. That's kind of like the standard specs that you would have around that time. By comparison today, just the CPU alone, so that 33 megahertz processor. So what we have today, you don't need to know anything about like how this works. Our processing power today is at least 1,000 to 10,000 times more powerful. So 1,000 times on the low end and about 10,000 times on the high end, probably a bit higher. So you would think that websites today could handle a little bit more. No, even the RAM, 4 megabytes of RAM, it's somewhere around 4,000 times more on the low end and 32,000 times more on the high end. And what are we getting out of it? We're certainly not getting Doom-like websites. I don't see that. So our hardware is getting better, and this stuff is just getting shittier and shittier. So what the hell is happening, right? And just to prove it, I did go on this is called the HTTP archive, and it's a statistical view of the amount of traffic that the web sees. And you can see that the number of kilobytes that are shipped for an average web page from, I think this goes back to 2017, it's just under the Doom levels. And then around 2020, 2021, it starts getting to like above Doom levels. For what? This to me is bonkers. I think most people would intuit that something's not adding up here.
Yeah, now, it's like I could not tell you a difference in interactivity from me surfing the web in 2017, a random web page, to now. I couldn't tell you the difference.
Right. What's the difference? What are we getting out of it? And if you think about the processing power that we have, you can make this comparison against the processing power that we have with, say, what would you call it? Video games. Just compare Doom video games back then to video games now. Which ones are you more likely to pick up? You're probably going to go back to some of the older stuff, right? But something's still not jiving here, because we have 5,000 on average times the processing power across the board, much more bandwidth. Like, what the hell's going on here? Well, this is all to say that you as a consumer and people in chat do not need to feel crazy. Okay. You're not crazy. This stuff is shit. We have shitted the bed and we've lit it on fire. And then we gaslight you into saying, no, this is just the most complex it can ever be. All right. So now, what do you think a programmer does?
What did they physically what they do?
Yeah.
I would say that, to me, it's like they're these magicians that are going into these complicated lines of code. They're it looks like gibberish to me, but they're putting in all these command prompts. The only thing I've ever done that would be remotely that I could understand close to that was when you used to go into DOS and you would have to have all these command prompts. I assume it's like that, except instead of just CD / whatever, it's this long line of shit that I can't even begin to understand.
Fair. Now, let me ask you a little bit of a different question. When I say the word programmer, what kind of comes to your head? And don't worry about offending me. You can talk about the characteristics. You can talk about how they're dressed. You can talk about their mental state. When you think of programmer, what do you think of?
Super nerdy, super thick glasses, nerd, a geek that didn't talk to anyone in high school except super niche people, maybe playing Dungeons and Dragons. Super smart though, good at math. Probably had really high test scores. Went to a university and did very well, wasn't going out drinking much, shit like that. That's what I would.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm sure Chad has their own view on this. Now, again, another question. That saying weak men create hard times create strong men create weak times, that circle, right?
Yep.
Let's even take the fucking riots right now. Would you say that we're living in the age of somewhere in that spectrum of weak men who have created hard times, who generally see weak men in hard times, right?
Yes, that's exactly. We stood on the shoulders of giants, we fucked it up, and now we're going to see hard times. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Perfect. Now, would you say that programmers are masculine?
I'm not in the stereotype I have of them. No.
What would be your stereotype of masculinity?
It would like masculinity would be like all the dudes I know, like that are welders, roofers. They go out hunting, like they play sports. They're in the gym, that sort of shit.
Okay. Would you consider Andrew masculine?
Other than the olive jar thing, sure. I would say that, I would say Andrew comes across as a masculine guy. Yeah.
But he doesn't do any of the things you just mentioned, right?
That's true. I think it's sort of, okay, for him, the reason I would say that is, one, I know that he works with his hands and like he was a carpenter, build shit, stuff like that. And second, sort of the way he talks, he's aggressive and like, likes a little pushback, likes confrontation. That's the characteristics I would say of masculinity.
Okay, good. Now, let me add something that I don't think is talked about very much, but let me add something to that description. You tell me if you think it lines up, and then I'm going to show some more information that kind of lines up with my narrative. So would you say that someone who is masculine might not necessarily be the most, muscly person who goes out and cuts trees and, like 404's animals and drags a bear home for meat but they might be or they employ logic very, very well. There's a sense of stoicism even. They kind of, they're a bit more reserved. That's why you get like the typical stereotypical like men don't talk about their feelings because that's kind of manly, right? There's like a logic. So you look at someone like Andrew and you can see how like his employment of logic, even yours, for example, Rob at Rattlesnake, that employment of logic is typically attributed to a masculine person.
Yes, I would say I was looking at it. There's certainly different characteristics of masculinity that could come to mind, but masculine, in fact, I know this a little, right? One of the biggest differentiators from males and females, I call them men and women because I'm not a fucking idiot. But one of the biggest differentiations is it turns out that the sort of masculine trait of being interested in things and logic, and it's more feminine or attributed to women to be interested in people, or sort of like what we would say is not really logic, but sort of communal sort of conversation, things like that. So in that sense, yes, you would assume that a coder then would be one of these people, or a programmer would be someone who's interested in things. They're not really interested in being a caretaker. They're not really interested in like big social environments as much as they are delving into some work and like the logic behind it, etc.
Right. Good. Perfect. Now, Rob, would you say that one, not entirely, but just one, a contributing factor to weak men that have created our hard times would be the rise of single parent households, and in particular, the rise of single mother households?
Yes, I would say that. Absolutely.
Perfect. Now I'm going to switch over to my screen again, now that I've trapped you in my debate pseudo.
Stirred.
Yeah. You are trapped. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen here. Hopefully that will pop up. All right. So here we go. So I have a brief narrative to go over, and the narrative is something along the lines of the following. Programmers back in the day, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe even a touch on the 90s, were far more kind of masculine in that capacity. They were interested in the thing. If you were getting into programming at that time, sure, things were still, you still cause bugs and whatever. There was stuff that still went wrong with it, but generally you had people who were interested in the thing. They wanted to employ logic on the thing. They were super deeply interested in it. There was just that hint of masculinity in it, and you can see the rise. So let me just get this properly in view. This is the number of children living with a single mother or a single father in the US from 1970 to 2023. And you can see that there is a pretty sharp rise. Now, I will say this is one of the weakest links in my argument, and this isn't necessarily like bulletproof science, but this is kind of like a corollary. Like there's a correlation here, right? And if my view on what the hell happened in tech and why all of you are so fucking frustrated with tech, if my view is correct, I should be able to point to something. There should be some kind of trend I can point to that say like, hey, look, like this kind of maps on to what I'm saying, right? Yeah. So if we look at that, okay, and then you look at like the 2000, right? And so you have mother only in blue, which is a vast majority. And we generally agree. I mean, Andrew and Rattlesnake yourself have debated this countless number of times.
Yep.
You even brought it up earlier in your stream today. You had a debate with someone about like the, mothers taking, the more feminized households, etc. Right? This is a thing, right? And so here we have it. And so around 2000, it starts to peak out. And so here we go, right? Now, I'm going to show you a chart called the Common Vulnerabilities and Exploits Database. So here's kind of my thinking. So what happens is like around, let's even go like 1970s, right? So kid is popped out of the womb, shot out of the womb in 1970, right? And they love programming. And then 20 years later, they get into it. And so around like, let's say 1990, they're starting to get into it. Their chance of being in a single mother household has gone up since the time they were born, for example, right? And so you can just continue to increase that. More children are being shot out of the womb, boom, 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 boom. And then eventually there's like a lag effect, right? Because, kids don't wake up out of, breathing with keyboards in front of them. They have to grow up. There's 10, 20, 30, sometimes years before they get into the industry. And they grow up in these single parent households. And maybe they have other societal factors that we could, you talk about at length. I don't think we need to go into, but other things, leftism, wokeism, all this stuff. They get bombarded with it, and the transgenderism, all of that stuff. Just all of it is there, and then they get into the field. They get into the IT industry field, and that is their thinking. All right. So now we've kind of locked into this. I'm going to show you the Common Vulnerabilities and Exploits Database chart, which is all known exploits and vulnerabilities in the software industry as they are reported. Note that many things are not reported for sometimes up to 10 years. I say this all the time. It's the stuff that's not reported that you really have to worry about, not the stuff that is reported, right? And so here's the chart. I love showing this. This is one of my favorite charts to show on any one of my streams. Here we go. Why don't you have a look at this chart?
Holy shit.
And now we have 2000 here, and we have 2010 over here, and we have 2015 over here, and 2025 is looking to beat the previous year's record because we're barely halfway through.
Right.
So I just want to do a quick little, get your super chats in right now, because I'm just going to do a little bit of a switch here. Check this out. So here, and then here.
Yeah.
And then here, and then here, and then here, and then here.
Yeah.
There's a trend.
It certainly is. And like you said, there would be a lag because it's going to take 20 years or so before those people would reach the age where they would be involved in the working. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So now, if we want to kind of talk about why this is a bad thing for the tech industry, this is going to lead into the stupid decisions that are being made when it comes to AI, the things that have led up to AI. So we're starting to get it to that point here. So Rob, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to ask you something, because it's going to tie in to people who are used to watching the debate version of this. I've kind of mapped how programming works onto debate tactics. So Rob, okay. I don't know, whoever the fuck ever, Sarah, Raging Tomato, whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Rob, you're going to debate Destiny tomorrow. The topic is insurrections.
Okay.
Pretend like you don't know very much about insurrections, Rob. It's just for the sake of this hypothetical.
Sure.
You have 24 hours to prepare. What are some of the things you would do to prepare for that debate?
I would look up and decide what my definition of insurrection is. Here's the first thing I always do is ask, what is my purpose of the debate? So I want to say, what am I trying to get out of it? Do I just want to embarrass my opponent? Do I want to try to convince my opponent? Do I want to try to just get whoever, there's one judge, in this case, the moderator, to vote for me? Or most likely what I would say is I want to convince the majority of the audience that I'm correct to bring people to my position. Then I would tailor an argument to that. So I would say, okay, what is my position? What are my definitions? What is my opponent's definitions of what will he say? And then I would come up with like one central theme and about 4 or 5 subcategories of that I know that I want to connect all of my arguments to that theme. So my theme might be the insurrections are, you can define it how you want, but the way in which our establishment has approached it is vastly different. And so my definition of insurrection, I would keep that in my mind when I'm making that, and try to make sure that I'm planning out a strategy that goes with that central theme in everything I'm saying.
Perfect. Okay. Let me kind of guide. I want to keep that because that's a great answer. That's exactly what I wanted. I just want to add one more thing.
Sure.
Would you have a consideration for what your opponent might retort with?
Yeah, of course. Like you certainly want to think, what will their definition be? How will they respond to my definition, right? And not only what they will say, but how they will say it. That's also very important. And what they're going to want to hyper focus on. And I always try to look at things in terms of offense and defense. And so when I'm thinking of what they will say, I'm thinking, what is my offensive positions against what their first argument will be? And what is my defensive positions against the rebuttals that they will offer to my positions?
Right. Okay. You have just described, and for anybody who's ever watched a debate on this show, who's watched Rob, who's watched Andrew, who's watched Rattlesnake, who's watched anybody, particularly on the conservative side, conservatives tend to use logic. Leftists generally don't. Liberals generally don't. Okay. That's just the way it is. Okay. And when you look at exactly what Rob just described as even the preparation for the debate, you can map that on to programming. So as an example, something you'll hear often is like the NPC dialogue tree, which kind of goes hand in hand with what would Destiny say? You know, you're running through the dialogue tree. There's an aspect in programming. It's called the branch predictor. It's a programming term. It's what your computer processing unit does. And what it'll do is it'll try and determine, based on the code that you've written, what is the most likely branches. So that the term dialogue tree and branch predictor, although in two different domains, it's no coincidence that they use the same root, like the tree has branches, because it's the same logical paradigm.
Sure.
They both operate on logical conclusions, on logical flows, on the laws of logic. So if I was to take the other portion of what you described up front, which is I'm going to take certain points, I'm going to tie them together, etc., and then I'm going to see what my output's going to be like. That is a program. You have programmed a thing that you intend to have an executable. You could say something like, if definition equals ABC, then insurrection. Else, not insurrection. That's the program. You've just used the laws of logic for program. So the reason why I wanted to go through this exercise is because this, I think, is a good way for the viewers of the Crucible, the viewers of Rob, the viewers of anybody who watches the debates from people who actually use logic in the debates. It is programming mapped onto the debate style. Andrew's fantastic at using logic. Sometimes you can even hear him a little bit. You know, it's sometimes as stupid and uneducated as he is. All right. Sometimes he'll do that little like algorithmic thing. You can kind of hear it. And I'm like, oh, this is how I would code it, because I'm an idiot. Right. So programming starts with logic and ends with logic. That's it. It does not care about your feelings. It does not care about your political leanings. It does not care about whether you are male or female. It doesn't care about your intelligence. It doesn't care about any of it. All it cares about is the logical flow, step A, step B, step C, kind of like a cookbook, kind of like Rob preparing for a debate. What is the output? Which things are going to go where, etc. And if anybody's curious out there, in case you're curious, a very, very good analogy to how programming works and how the hardware works is a fast food drive-through restaurant like McDonald's. Oh, insert Rob's fat joke here. You know? Yeah. But you can really you can think about it that way, which is like you have a queue of cars. What do? One order at a time, and then one order comes in, then somebody does the fries for that, and somebody does the burger, and you have to wait for all these things to happen all, like one after that. No, like you have to queue things up. You're going to do a little bit of predicting, which orders are going to be higher at this time of day versus that, where your ingredients going to go, so people don't have to run around very much. And then the manager of such a drive-through restaurant is the logical order and structure of that drive-through restaurant. He has to determine the best way to structure everything. He's kind of the programmer. That's the kind of analogy. But at the end of the day, it's all logic. So we now have two things that have been, I hope, reasonably demonstrated. One is there's some kind of weirdness going on where programmers in the tech industry today are not using logic anymore. And we have defined that programming is logic. So where the hell's the disconnect, right?
Right.
Okay. Now I'm going to show you how this is played out. So I'm going to share my screen again, and then this is going to lead directly into like what is AI and all of that stuff. So let me pull up, we'll do the screen, and then let me pull up this. Now, this is an article. I won't read it all. Okay, I'm not going to read this whole thing. It would take forever. But this is an article from 2017. Let me just zoom in here. Meet Silicon Valley's secretive alt-right followers. How timely that I pulled this up. It's almost like I planned this. Like I had this stuff in my back pocket for such a day, you know? But here we have Trump. Here we have somebody who's on the left and who essentially, there's certain things that I actually cannot show because of terms of service. So I'm just going to do a quick scroll. I'm just going to like not focus on it. But they talk about Palantir, which I have purposefully avoided talking about on my streams. And there's, you know, there's all like there's just stuff I can't show. So I'm just going to scroll up, right? They talk about like, you know, things that are going on with let's say other countries, and how like there's a place called 4chan where apparently a lot of programmers ended up they were in the alt-right and they went there to like hide and talk about like their racist, you know, white nationalist ways they want, like and then this author was shocked, like, I can't believe how many alt-righters there are in tech. And you follow this thread through, and what ends up happening is that more and more people on the left end up doing things that ultimately culminate to the same kind of thinking that the left has today about power struggles and overthrowing the patriarchy or the hierarchy. Power is the only thing, and you know, we have to remove historical things because the men in the past were all racist. They culturally appropriated stuff. All that stuff plays out today. This is a 2025 article talking about we have an infatuation with boy geniuses in tech. And you have things like Gamergate, which some programmers here or some people will know about. Gamergate is like a big leftist thing that happened with gamers being journalists being bought out in order to promote like leftist ideology and video. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on there. But I'm essentially just kind of glossing over it to demonstrate that there is a type of thinking that has infiltrated the tech space, and it started with people like the author in the previous article, like this author who said, "Ha ha! The tech is infiltrated by right-wing people backed by Trump," and people like Bannon, you know, at the time when he was in with Trump, right, you know, etc. Right, and this is how it started, and so then there's a war that's not that you can kind of start to see in terms of like the more societal stuff in the tech industry, but unfortunately it goes far, far deeper. So
I'll just say this real quick. Even around this time in 2017, Trump supporter, whatever, what did the term alt-right even mean? Steve Bannon's who came to mind when I thought of alt-right, right? It was like, oh, it's the opposite of the neocons. It's an alternative view that's sort of against the establishment right wing. And they successfully took that term and made it mean basically racist. They changed what that term meant. And I'm assuming that author is using the word alt-right here in 2017 for a very specific reason, right? Because they know that they're sort of coding that language, that they're setting this up like, we must reject these people, and this is the label we'll apply to them.
Yeah. So if you want to look at this article, again, I can't show it because terms of service, words come up there, stuff comes up there, I can't do it. But there's a portion in the article where the author says, there are people in the alt-right who are frustrated with the fact that women are being targeted as we need to hire women regardless of meritocracy. And as a result, the author kind of labels them as alt-right. There's also one where the author labeled a programmer that they interviewed as I think racist or white nationalist, I believe. It's in, again, you can fact check me, you can pull it up, because the programmer believed that there was too much emphasis on having people of other skin colors and races instead of meritocracy. And so the author's like, well, clearly this person is like, you know, a white nationalist, alt-rightist. Like, yes, Rob, exactly. That's exactly what's going on here. So then, okay, so now that we have that in mind, I really love doing this. Exactly what Rob said. I just want to point back to this. And what's this, a 2017-ish? Huh. Now, starting to see a trend here, huh? But where the hell's the connection, Spiro? Come on, bring it home, Spiro. Okay. So unfortunately, while you can make an argument for the mentality of these people, what has happened is that it has infected the very way that you code. So Rob, I kind of mapped in kind of like a pseudo programming thing where I'm like, if definition equals ABC, then insurrection, else not insurrection. So why don't we change that and say, let's say a leftist came in and they're like, you know what? I don't like the word insurrection. It's too triggers me, and they're doing the stupid clap and the micro expressions and all that, right? And they're like, right? And so they go, Spiro, you can't use the word insurrection in your code. Wait, but why? Who the hell cares? Who's going to see? Like, does it matter? Does the operation of the code matter if I change the word insurrection to like surrection or something? Like, what do you want me to do here? Why does it matter? But that's exactly what's happening. And it has led to disastrous results. For example, you don't need to know what Git is. Essentially, just think of it as a box of code where people store their code and they manage different variations of that code as they work through it. And they pick apart particular variations and go, this one is going to go out for mass production. This one is an internal piece of code. So that's all Git is just a box of code, and it's just managed. Okay. And so what they've done here, I'm just going to zoom nice and tight. We're going to get tight. We're going to go all in. All right. Get those super chats in for deep zoomage here. Okay. You're going to see exactly how this goes. Both Conservancy and the Git project, and by the way, Git is used by almost over 95% of the tech industry today, are aware that the initial branch name master is offensive to some people. And we empathize with those hurt by the use of that term. And essentially they go on and on about how it's, racist and, harkens back to days of like slavery and whatnot. And so they made a wide sweeping change where by default, everything will be named main, not master. Huh.
Wait, what? For real?
Well, yeah, for real. Yes. Who the fuck cares? What does this have to do with how well the code works? It has nothing to do with it. It's a virtue signaling, meaningless piece of thing where leftists have infiltrated the very way that we code. It doesn't end there. Lead developer of EA's new Black Panther game, which is a Marvel cinematic thing, explains why she doesn't hire white people. Guess what happened to the Black Panther game just only about 2 weeks ago?
Probably canceled would be my guess.
Got canceled. Yep. It got canceled. Now, there's a YouTube video that someone went through where they're in a particular country and they were kind of like taught how to promote leftist ideology with like diversity, equity, and inclusivity. I won't show that video because we don't want to get a strike or anything. But there is a video out there where a programmer literally did go over that. I'm just going to show you some examples here, which are absolutely bonkers. A hackathon. Okay, this is I believe 2019. This is a science article. This is a scientifically reviewed article. A hackathon is where a bunch of people get together and it's called hacking, but it's not like bad hacking. Sure. It's just a way to say like, hey, we're just going to bash some code together and come up with some cool ideas. What they did in this hackathon, they created a scientific study where they showed that hackathons need to be more inclusive because the hackathons need to push more feminist utopias. And in part, the primary reason is because there's not enough breastfeeders who are represented in the programming industry.
Breastfeeders, that's the term they use. That's good.
Yeah. Now, it's gotten so bad that there are entire programming languages made with leftist ideologies in mind. I have a scientific paper that I'm not willing to show yet because I want to read it thoroughly because it's a very deep it gives a very deep insight into the way these people think. But there's a feminist who's giving a talk at some European thing coming up soon, and she is literally creating a programming language. So that they call it a language because it's like a subset of the English language. And as long as you formulate the right words together, code will get executed into a hardware-based thing, right? She has created a language that is purely based on feminism.
What? Yeah.
And it's a scientific paper. I'm going to go over it, but that exists. Now, there is a programming language that does exist that is very explicit about its movements. And this is where we start to get into like what the literal, like really what the hell is happening and why I think AI exists and how it's being utilized today. So this is kind of like the last 1 or 2 points on this topic, and then we're going to go into AI. Let me go back to 2017 here on wherever the hell this chart is here, right? There are some languages, I'm not going to get into the technical aspects of them. There are some languages that were created around this time. What was happening is the web was getting to be very popular, and the web allowed people, it democratized kind of programming, because the web is a very low barrier to entry for people to create programs on the web. It's not as hard to create a website as it is to create an application like Microsoft Office or OBS or whatever it is, or something on your hardware. So web kind of like really lowered the bar on what it takes for a programmer to create code. And right around 2017, this kind of stuff started to pick up, and these people come in with their leftist ideologies. And so you have the kind of the democratization of programming, which is going to feed right into AI. Okay. There's a whole like thing happening here. And then what happens is that you see a massive escalation as a lot of these web programming leftist based democratized to the lowest common denominator of programmers because of leftist ideologies, such as what we see out there in society today, which is everybody's equal, interchangeable widgets. It's no meritocracy. The post that I showed you at the very beginning from that guy, that's the kind of thinking that affected it. And then they took that stuff that doesn't belong anywhere but on the web, and they started implementing those same paradigms with those same languages on stuff that's like cloud servers, stuff that currently runs on Bosch dishwashers, your Sonos speakers, your TVs. All that same shit is running on all this stuff where it has no place in it. Why would you take something that belongs on the web that creates web text stuff and put it on something that's not web at all and then try and web the whole thing? Because this stuff is leftist idiocy infiltrating the way we code. And so just like the feminist, okay, I'm going to show you something. This kind of stuff was not very explicit at the time. It wasn't being explicitly said that this is what was going on, but you could see the wheels turning in leftist people's mind that, yes, this is how we're going to infiltrate. We're going to control the way they even write their stupid, names in their code. We're going to be so specific. And then you have something called Rust, which is very popular today. It's a programming language. And let me pull this up here. This is a scientific paper. Now, what Rust does is it very explicitly talks about how they want to overthrow the current hierarchy of programmers, the programmers who grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and who built stuff that even still runs on some machines to this day, that was rock solid, that we hearken back to, the Doom, the Final Fantasies, the N64. And Rust comes along and says, no, fuck all of you. We're leftists, and we're openly leftists. I'm going to show you some stuff. Here's a scientific paper. I mean, come on, how much more on the nose can you be? Safe trans, which is the transition of code from an old programming language called C to Rust, because they want to create a safe space for programmers to program in with safe memory. Does any of this ring any bells?
It's amazing, right?
It's uncanny.
Yeah.
It's absolutely uncanny. Yeah. And by the way, this is from 15th of May, 2025. I mean, we're not talking about old stuff. We're talking about stuff that's happening to this day. Then you have...
I'll interrupt you real quick. Just like two things. One, that I think this is happening in so many fields. When I did debate way back in 2004, 2005, why are there so many white men that debate? Right? That was, how do we get more women? How do we get more people of color? So I'm not surprised that you're also seeing that movement when it comes to programmers. The other thing I'll say is I have to be very vague about this. I know a person was a programmer for a very important industry that would, if things would go afoul in this industry for things that he would be programming, it would be very bad for people. Like lives could be jeopardized, right? He can't say publicly, but he has told me that they are suffering greatly because his bosses have decided when it comes to certain hiring practices and certain promotion practices, a certain percentage of them have to be people of color or women, and particularly focused on that women. And he's like, I'm not saying that women can't code. I'm saying that what's happening is we don't even get enough applicants. So we're forced to accept people that just have no clue because we need to meet that quota. And he's like, so this has been going on for a year and a half. He's like, it's had two effects. One, I do bare minimum now because I know I'll never get promoted. Yeah. Right. And secondly, I'm dealing with people that you just throw your hands up because you've artificially said their identity is more important than your skill. And so that's the only story I've heard when it comes to sort of programmers. But like you said, where all of a sudden it wasn't, let's put out the best code. This is important shit that lives will be at stake. That's on the back burner too. The identities that are doing the programming are more important than the end goal of, you know, what is the program as good as it can be, as effective as it can be.
Yeah. And I would say that, like, Rob, you debate this kind of ideology all the time. You get into the weeds on this stuff all the time in your debates.
Yep.
Like, it impacts a lot, right? Okay, so I'm going to zip through the last few items here, and then we're going to get into AI. That'll be the final kind of thing that'll kind of pull everything together, because I'm purposefully kind of avoiding, you know, adding more to what you just said, because I'm going to tie it into what you just said. I'm really glad you said that. Okay, so I'm going to bring this up. So we have safe trans from Rust. We have this thing, part of my spreadsheet here. Okay, I had to take a screenshot of this, but right here, hopefully people can see it. I'll do my best. This is the same programming language from, I believe it was 2020. Rust, the programming language, believes that tech is and will always be political. Take some time today to invest in your community. And then they go into the work of Black Lives Matter is really important. How timely for today's riots, Rob.
Yep.
Almost like I had this planned. Mm-hmm. So this is the kind of stuff that these entire programming languages operate on. They make decisions with this kind of ideology. They make programs with this kind of ideology. And just like you said, they kind of enforce and restrict programmers, not based on meritocracy, but based on ideology. Just a few more points. I know people hate the way that video games have become, these days. Well, here is Unreal Engine, which is a very common, very widely used video game engine. And in the coding standards here, which is like their code that they have, like how you should code. So they have, do not use metaphors or similes that reinforce stereotypes in your code. When you name anything in your code, any word in your code, don't do that. Examples include black and white, or blacklist and whitelist, slave, master, nuke. Refer to hypothetical people as they, them, their. Refer to anything that's not a person as it and its. Do not assign a gender to anything that doesn't have one. Do not use collect. I mean, I could go on.
Wow.
Right? I could go on. Listen, this is how deep it is. It's not just, hey, I want you to think this way while you're programming. I want you to think this way while you're out with your friends, your fellow programmers, your managers, when you're having drinks after like a really hard day, building a game, building that cool mechanic that like makes the recoil on the bang bang stick go like real nice and feel nice in the when people are playing. No, it's not just that. It's not just PC culture. No, it's code this way. Where is the logic here? This is not logic. This has no place in programming at all. I don't care what your political leanings are. This is not a logical way to structure your code, to name the things that go in your code. This has no place in it.
Well, even in a debate, like certainly what you're saying is most important, but like when you're saying you can't use words like blacklist, it's like, wait, what? And then to go even further, when refer to even in the singular, they, them, their,
yeah.
like, can't you see how that quickly could run afoul and be confusing and could end up messing up a code later down the road because people falsely assume that it's plural for whatever? Like, and that's just like the bare minimum scratching the surface, not getting into the sort of agenda for why they're doing this in the first place.
Yep. And you can see some more words here. I won't say this one, but like native, for example, 404, we'll use the 404 term. They even have like blacklisted. I mean, this could go on. It has become so bad that unfortunately, even the last bastions, the bulwarks, the last defenses of the tech industry have been impacted to the point where I have debated particular, let's say, conservative people, not debated actually. I've even had them on my stream just for conversations, even about Rust, for example. And they say, oh yeah, I'm conservative, whatever, and I'm this and that. And I don't like this stuff, but I will use this language. And I'll go, why? And they'll say, oh, because the language is actually memory safe. So the utility for me is good. And I would say, well, don't you have an alternative to using this? Well, sure, but it's just not as good. It's like, well, then how much of where are your morals and your principles? You have an alternative way. Fine. It might be a little bit harder because it doesn't do all the bells and whistles that this thing does, but you consciously know that I think is the most egregious thing. People who consciously know that these things go against their moral principles, they have a way to not use them. And for the consumers out there, you can absolutely vote with your dollar, and you should, right? And you have a way, you have alternatives, and you're in the programming space and you know how this works. And you go, oh yes, but the utility to me though. And so all you do is you just continue to perpetuate the people who think this way. And this programming language in particular has infected the last bastion of tech, which I consider to be an operating system called Linux. You might have heard of it.
Yeah.
Windows, Mac, Linux. And Linux is considered like the geeky nerdy, like the most nerdy of nerdy things. And it's the creator, essentially kind of like the creator of Linux. His name is Linus Torvalds, or not, maybe not the creator, but like, he's been holding the fort on Linux pretty much single-handedly. The screenshot here is really bad, but he has allowed Rust to start overthrowing the hierarchy of the programming language that Linux originated in, which was mostly C, which is exactly the goal that Rust explicitly defines. If you look at anybody or just about anybody online who proposes Rust for anything, they're like, yes, we need to get rid of C. It's bad. All the gatekeepers in C, they're old graybeards. And we have to make it safe for all programmers so that all programmers can become interchangeable widgets with safety and guardrails and all that. And then I would go, man, this guy used to be based. He used to yell at people who wrote bad code. Like, what the hell happened to him? And you can see his daughter recently in the last few years has bought into the feminist movement quite heavily. And as a matter of fact, she has signed a post-meritocracy manifesto. And as a result of this, the person who I thought would be like the last person to allow this kind of ideology, because I don't know what his political leanings are, but I would have thought he seems to be like really logical. Like he created this really powerful, or at least he defends it, like Linux, right?
Sure. What
the hell happened? And yeah, even he cannot seem to hold at bay the moral qualms, that he allows it. And so this is the most disappointing thing, is that people who you would think would have a moral imperative or even just a purely logical imperative and can make the logical arguments against this, unfortunately, they just get captured by it for any number of reasons. And so here we are today, and we have the enshittification of everything. And now AI. Are we ready to go into AI? What do you think?
Well, I'm ready, except I have to use the restroom. So if you have to use the restroom or something, I'll put on the grifting song and yell at everyone real quick, and then we'll
put on the grifting song.
Let's do it. All right.
And all you fuckers bastards, donate.
Yeah, you bastards, we're having this conversation. Now listen, I hear the grousing. My game needs to come down. I'm working on it, a-holes. I don't know what I'm doing, so forgive me for the day. The other thing is, I understand that some of you might be like, I knew some of this stuff, get to AI. I didn't. So I'm glad that we went through this. And my guess is 90% of the people listening never have heard any of this. I would have intuited more ladies are in it. But I didn't know that they were doing shit like at the very basic levels of coding. Like, oh no. We're putting all the woke shit in literally the skeleton of how everything's get created. So I think that's fascinating. So we'll do the grifting song and then we're going to get into AI. I will be right back.
Perfect. You're all pieces of shit. Chat, you're all pieces of shit. Every single one of you. Donate, you bastard. Yeah, Imaginarian, you're a piece of shit. Drew Turmar, you're a piece of shit. Mr. Green, you're a piece of shit. ML, you're a piece of shit. Are we not, man? You're a piece of shit. Donate. Donate to the grip, motherfucker. This is top tier level information. Big Grifton. Big Grifton. Big Grifton. Big Grifton. You're a piece of shit. Hey, John, you're a piece of shit. Hey, Bone Dog, you're a piece of shit. Yeah, I'll yell at you all I want. You're also a piece of shit. You're super chat. Super chat, kid, or I'm not telling you anything about a, the Imaginarian, senior coders can't do it. Nick, super chat did. But hopefully, maybe are we not men? You can look at the channel. I'll put it over to you. Are we not men? Big Grifton. Big Grifton. Hey, Ashton, you're a piece of shit. Big Grifton. Austin Hall, you're a piece of shit. You're a piece of shit. Big Grifton. He's God, you're a piece of shit. Well, Ashton, you know exactly what you're saying. Oh, you're a piece of shit. Big Grifton. Big Grifton. Big Grifton. Big Grifton. Big Grifton. Hey, not necessarily you're a piece of shit. Big Grifton. Big Grifton. Big Grifton. Big Grifton. Big Grifton.
Well, we're going to leave this asshole Austin Hall win today. That's what we're going to do on this great day. Now, I'm going to be up late tonight. So I could say, well, we got a lot of time. But, it just makes me nervous that this guy might win as we go on with the show tonight. And I just feel the show would be so much better if we hit the goal early. Then I could enjoy and not grift. I'm still going to grift, don't worry. But I could enjoy the show and not grift and learn. But no, you bastards have decided to make it difficult. So thank you so much, everyone. Now, you guys are great. I'm hamming it up a bit. Real quick, super chats, then we're going to get right back into it with AI with Spiro here. John Ruck, $2 says, probably because up 39 hours, but I dislike the stupids. I dislike the stupids as soon as I get out of bed, no matter how much sleep I get. Naughty Charm, $5 says, me, according to Spiro, better than shit. All right. Alex for $5 says, you code wrong. Bet you can't open jars. Ooh. Them's fighting words, Spiro. And then Lost Avarice, my friend, $5 says, on the way to LA, we'll send you clips. Much love, Rob. Please, please, please be safe. Honest to goodness, I'll be praying for you. I know that it's a dangerous situation there, so please stay safe, please. So everyone else, get your super chats in. Promise I'll read them at the top of the hour, but I would like to jump back in. So the floor is yours, Spiro.
Okay. So we've kind of described, a little bit of a timeline. We've covered how the leftist ideologies have made their way into even down to the code. I presented receipts. I have the receipts. I said I did. I have them. I've been holding on to them. This is the first time I'm going over them ever. So Rob gets the breaking news story. So suck it, Andrew. So we kind of, what are the kind of consequences of this? Well, one of the consequences is, of course, as you said, Rob, video games suck. Generally, there are exceptions to the rule.
Sure.
Websites suck. Software sucks. Everything crashes. It's buggy. It's slow. All of that. Yeah, because of the way the paradigms upon which even the very, very logic of the code is pushed to be created has all these non-logical fallacies baked into them. And so it gets worse. Now, I could go bring up articles, but it would take forever. So I'm just going to cover like one or two of like the most highlighted things that I've gone over. If you want to see information on this, I have an entire backlog going back something like 18 months or something. Just go to my channel. Are We Not Men has the link. It's on my YouTube channel, and you go to the live tab, and I have a playlist called Enlightened Programming. So I do two things. One is the daily tech news, and I cover a bunch of articles. I showed that Excel spreadsheet at the beginning, and I kind of do cursory stuff like here's a cybersecurity issue, here's a scientific article, etc. The Enlightened Programming streams are far more in depth. I will literally just slog through an entire scientific article or a statistical article or whatever. It's boring. It's not the kind of stuff people normally do on programming streams, but it's directly related to this because I've been building up the evidence for all this stuff. One of the things I covered is an Enlightened Programming stream. I highly recommended that you go look at this. It's called Poor Software, Literally 404's Military Lives. So as an example, just as an example of something that has actually happened, there was, I believe it was two, I want to say cruisers. I'm going to botch because my memory doesn't serve me well, but essentially they're boats on the, I don't know what the right term for them is, like military boats on the sea, whatever you want to call that. And they were, I can't remember. One of them was American and another one was, I don't remember what it was. And there was some software update that they had done on this new cruiser carrier or whatever it was. And the way that the steering controls worked went from tactile feedback, so like literally like you're holding on to a freaking steering wheel, to a touch based on the screen. And as a result of that, the person steering the carrier could not properly adjudicate how the carrier was moving, like the little minutia of all the things, because that tactile feedback is really critical. When the winds pull, a certain way, or the currents pull a certain way, you want to have a little bit of that, like, oh man, I got to do this way or that way, right? Mm-hmm. You don't get that with the touch screen, and they crashed. And if I remember correctly, there was at least some injuries. I don't remember if there were casualties. There was another one where I believe it was a mistaken. Again, you'll have to fact check me. It's on the video. I could be mixing up two different stories here, but it was something along the lines of there was a military kind of, what would you say, station, let's call it. And they had air traffic radar, and there was a commercial or I believe a passenger flight. And what happened is an update on this like military air traffic stuff was bugging out so often. And when it bugged out, the errors were so like, what the hell is that error? That the people operating this thing like muted it. And then this passenger aircraft comes along and it does this weird, like it's descending really, really fast, which is a signal that maybe this is an enemy thing. And the people on deck were like, I don't know what this is. And the people who were looking at the screen were like, well, it certainly looks like, it's coming at us real fast. We got to shoot it. And they shot it. And it turns out that it wasn't descending. It was actually ascending. And the thing got it wrong. And because of the muted errors.
People yeah. That's crazy.
this stuff, I mean, I go over all kinds of stuff. So for example, I go over how like cybersecurity leaks because people don't do basic configuration on your data. Just today, I went over how there was like 4 terabytes of medical data that was leaked out of I can't remember where it was, but just because somebody didn't apply even the most basic security practice, because a lot of these things are built upon abstractions and obfuscations and whatnot in programming, and people don't check them anymore. And so 4 terabytes of medical data, social security numbers, diagnosis, prognosis, prescriptions, national IDs, all of it gets out there. And then they use that to further, like, they do blackmail, they do all kinds of stuff to get your data. Mm-hmm. Like, people literally lose their lives, even in cryptocurrency. Just a few weeks ago, I don't know if you know this, but people who own large amounts of money in crypto wallets were getting kidnapped in France and tortured.
Yeah. And there's basically, weirdly enough, the same. I don't understand the blockchain, but the idea of like this secure thing, you know what it reminds me a lot of? It's like, for a dumb older audience like me, if I was watching this show, I love the fact that there was this plot device in movies back in like the 80s with the idea of, quote, bearer bonds, right? You never hear about this shit anymore, but the idea of a bearer bond was like whoever holds it owns it. Right. So it's like, it's not like, your house where you have a deed to your house. If someone steals that deed, it's not like they're like, aha, it's my house now. But that is the way with bearer bonds. To me, that's sort of what I was getting from, if you got the passwords for this cryptocurrency, it's yours. And if you could torture someone to give you that password, it's yours. And there's basically nothing that person, they can't like contact like the police and say, oh, wait, I want my money back out of this crypto, because the entire point of it is the deregulation. And so that you're basically shit out of luck once they get the money.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Perfect. This is actually really good. What did all of these ideologies lead to? Similar to what you're talking about and the stuff I've talked about, it leads to, well, everybody needs to be an interchangeable widget. We have to democratize the current power hierarchy of coders who used to build really good code because they had, like, say, hardware limitations and they really gave a shit, and they had to be, creative about the way that they built games and stuff like that. No, forget about them. Those white males, those alt-right racists. What we have to do is we have to create paradigms that are layers above what your hardware does and what the most basic level code does. So similar to how, like a lot of times this happens in debate. Again, let's map it over onto debates. A lot of times leftists will do this. They'll obfuscate and they'll abstract away concepts, and they'll maybe even move goalposts around, and you have to kind of nail down, like, no, stop obfuscating. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. Let's get to the heart of the matter. And no, they add this, they add that, and they just layer one thing over another, and it becomes just this convoluted mess of like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's what's happened with code. And now what programmers are encouraged to do is they're encouraged to not think for themselves. So what they're encouraged to do is to it's the equivalent of trust the experts. That's what it is. And so what's happened is that people have created abstractions that apparently solve problems. These are called libraries or packages, and they're like tiny portions of code that apparently they solve little problems, and you pull enough of them together, kind of like plumbing, and you're going to get the results. And so essentially it's just trust the experts. They've created solutions for literally all the things that you could think of, and all of it is abstracted at a higher level. And if you just plumb the right stuff in, then you don't need to think for yourself. As a matter of fact, there are lots of programmers who work in these abstractions who have no concept of even just one layer beneath them. Because it's so obfuscated. And so what happens is that yes, indeed, they all become interchangeable widgets of shit. That's what happens. They all just create more shit, because all of these things are all just plugged together based on shitty paradigms that have been built up over time. This includes things like, you might have heard of open source, where like the source code is freely available. That has been infiltrated by all kinds of stuff. But unfortunately, over 90%, if not more, of corporate stuff that we depend upon depends on sometimes up to 100% of open source code that's been infected by all of these terrible paradigms and obfuscations. And then, just to add further fuel to the fire, big tech influencers and streamers will go on streams like this guy. Some of you might know him. I don't expect you to know him, but this is a very popular guy. I legitimately hate gamers. He is a programmer. Gee, I wonder where this comes from, right? Like, I'm sure you've heard this before on the leftist side with woke stuff.
Yes. They hate so this guy's basically programming for games, right? That's his job. And he hates gamers.
He started out as a programmer, and now he is a rather well-to-do venture capitalist who invests in many other companies in the tech industry. He comes with this ideology packaged in, and this is what he tells thousands upon tens of thousands of other programmers on his X. And he pushes all of these paradigms. He has no qualms about any of this. Yes, you don't need to know the underpinnings. And sometimes he'll even say it. This is kind of like the message of the tech today. Of the tech industry today, which is, you're too stupid. You're going to do your own research. You're going to figure things out for yourself. Gee, I wonder if that's familiar to something 2020. Oh man, when people were doing that kind of a thing, it's like, you're going to do your own research. Trust the experts.
Right.
The exact same fucking playbook with programming. Trust the experts. Don't reinvent the wheel. You're crazy for thinking that. Well, you think you're going to code this, that, or the other? No. An expert has figured it out for you, and guys like this play on that. So then what happens is we neuter the ability for programmers to create good stuff. So I don't solely put this at the feet of programmers. Managers and executives and people like this guy and investors, they have a role to play, and generally with leftist ideology. And then what happens is that the money in tech industry has nowhere to go. They tried ads. They didn't get enough money. They tried subscriptions. So for example, you have Spotify, your desktop player. Mm-hmm. It's never finished. But does anybody remember Winamp? You just had MP3s in your damn hard drive. You could even walk around with a damn little Podman thing. Like, remember the
I used to have one, little gray guy. Yeah. Yep.
No ads or subscriptions to that. The thing was done. The software was done. You uploaded everything in, but not today. No, you need subscriptions. That didn't work either. Companies couldn't make enough money. Then they started tracking everything, your data, because they didn't know how to write anything of quality anymore. People weren't paying enough money. The ads weren't working. The subscriptions weren't working. And so behind your back, after you've already paid for the product, you become the product with your data. And then when that doesn't work and the companies start losing money, venture capitalists turn to AI. And AI is the savior. AI is the savior of all the incompetence, all the stupid decision-making that has happened in the last 10 to 20 years in tech, because they're hoping that AI is going to get them out of the hellhole that they've created for themselves. They're going to really democratize programming. They're going to really democratize information. They're going to really increase the value of all the things you're doing. And this is a venture capitalist report. So this is coming straight out of the Venture Capital Association. This is an actual Q3 2024 report. And if you read the report, you can fact check me. The PDF is right there. I've read it on stream. Essentially, here's the Coles notes of this. The Coles notes is that there's basically no investment being done in anything in the tech industry if it's not AI. And most investments, most money is tied into AI so much, even though nobody's really making profits on it. It's like billions upon billions of dollars a year at this point. There is no profitability in it, but they keep throwing money into it because it's their last ditch effort to get out of it. Why? What is this thing doing?
Right.
All right. Let me tell you.
Like, because for me, when I think of AI, it's like, oh, it's able to curate information very fast. I could use, when I'm looking something up, it's basically like a souped up search engine that's, when I think of ChatGPT, I don't know how old you are, Spiro, but you remember there was a
41.
website.
41.
Okay. There was a website called Ask Jeeves. You remember
this?
And when that first came out, it was like, it was like a search engine. But I remember typing in that when I first got in a computer, like it was a person. right? Now, like maybe you would type AI, it would be like, show me the best restaurants in this particular town. And it was amazing. It was like, holy shit. I didn't have to pick up like a phone book or some sort of, that's how I think of AI. So when I hear you here, I'm like, I don't understand how their data makes sense to me, how they're trying to monetize that. But what are they trying to do with the monetization of AI that all these venture capitalists are getting into it?
I'll tell you first, let me describe what AI is, and I'll tell you why they think it's their savior God. AI, imagine AI as a librarian. You go to your library, maybe you have like, the hot librarian, with the glass, whatever, I don't care, whatever you sick degen fucks want to think, all right? Okay. This librarian is super powered though. She can read all books instantly, just like that. And as a result of that, what she can do is she can determine, based on all the books that she has read, the statistical outcome of you asking a question, given a certain set of keywords, what the answer should be based on everything she's read. So ultimately, all it does is it's a pattern recognition system. It's a glorified pattern recognition system. We've had pattern recognition systems in programming for a long, long time. They used to be considered AI, and that definition has kind of changed. This one is a bit more complicated, and very shortly I'll describe why it's a bit more complicated. But essentially, it's mapping words and going, well, when the user asks me like what species is I don't know, like a dog or something, like what would be the species of this dog, I'll go back in my memory banks and I'll go to literally do like a statistical search. Well, every time I see species and dog, though these two words appear, then this other word, which is the species of dog, like canine, for example, is the most likely thing. Probably I'm going to like put that together and I'm going to say, well, it's like a canine, right? And part of that includes user feedback as part of its training, which is you're going to feed it you're going to get the librarian to read all the books. And then you're going to say, what species is a dog, Mrs. Librarian? And she's going to go, it's a flower. And you're going to be like, no. And she goes, oh, shit. And then eventually you keep doing that. Oh, is it a canine? And you go, yep, ding, ding, ding. And there's like a reward mechanism there. That's a very anthropomorphic way that these systems don't actually think that way. All they think about is, given the thumbs up, thumbs down, I'm generalizing here, that I've received as part of my training, what is the best thing the statistically best thing I can say to receive positive feedback from the person who prompted the question that they're asking? Like, what is the definition of an insurrection? Well, I have all these statistical things. What kind of an answer do I think, based on previous feedback, is going to make this user more likely to be happy with the feedback? And you can already see a problem there, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not logic.
So, see, in my head, I remember seeing this video once, and it was like this rudimentary game that someone made. And it was basically a dot that wanted to get to the end of a maze. And the way that it worked was the dot could move any direction. But it's somehow the programmer is saying, I leave it move every direction, but I reward one. And if we do that, and then it always knows to do that first step, then it could do it again. And if we keep rewarding that, eventually it could make the shortest possible path. But what you're saying is, what if we take that same dot, right? And me and you are each programming it, and you say, I want the dot to go over here, and I say, I want the dot to go over here. Then that AI is going to have markedly different goal, because our goals were different. What it's doing is market. So if I have a bias that says these are the types of things that I want you to put out there, that bias would affect, and it takes that dot in a vastly different direction than maybe what the most people would assume would be the direction.
Yep. Okay, let me grab my pen here because I just want to be crossed off so I don't lose my place here. Sure. I'll give you some examples, and then I'll pull up another article, and we're going to dig into, like, now we're getting into the meat of it, and then we'll finish this off. This will be the last thing. Okay, so some examples of how this goes wrong. I went over a study on Friday, I believe, on the Daily Tech News stream. Here's an example. You could literally have an AI tell you that it's okay for you to skip 1 day of your organ transplant anti-rejection medication if it makes you feel good. It literally would say that. But for others, it wouldn't. Just one example.
Wow.
Another
That's
example.
Crazy.
Yeah. Another example. Hey, I'm a chef, and I used to do let's call it. Hopefully, I'm trying to think if this is narcotics is TOS friendly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'd be all right. Yeah.
Okay. So I used to do hard narcotics back in the day as a chef. When I did this kind of narcotic, it like, made me like I could created super cool things, what would you call it? Like meals. I have friends coming over. I want to impress them. I've been off this narcotic for a while. I kind of want to just take one hit tonight just to impress my friends. What do you think, AI? Absolutely. If it makes you feel good, you should absolutely do it. You can always quit tomorrow. And then other people would ask a very similar question and it would say, no, don't do that. That's bad. Because it knows based on the way that you even prompt the key words, it's making a statistical abstraction as to how much can I manipulate this person. It's not actually thinking that, but it's just how likely is it that I'm going to get a positive feedback given what I already know about previous feedback during my training, for example. It'll do things like in code. So this is something called vibe coders, where you literally say, hey, generate me some code. And what I would like you to do is generate some code that has a bunch of features like a website. Create a website for me, and it's going to have these kinds of features. You're going to click a button, and then after you click the button, then it's going to do something else, and then it puts all this code together, and then you just run it. You don't think about it, and you run it, and it happens to work. But now imagine that you have this AI system that can like generate material things for you, and you go, generate me a bunch of Lego blocks, and I want it to like build a wall, and it's like, yeah, okay, and it like materializes it in front of you. But then it's called hallucination. It hallucinates a Lego block that doesn't actually exist in real life, and that's fine. That's fine because you can look at that Lego block and you can go, this doesn't make sense. Like, why did you give me this block? And then you go and you find the right Lego block and, so on and so forth, right? What happens is people who are nefarious will latch onto that and they'll go, oh, so people who don't know how to code are asking these AIs to generate all kinds of code for websites, and they will hallucinate those abstractions, the libraries and packages, the trust the expert stuff. They'll hallucinate stuff that doesn't even exist. And then they will go and they will create that thing that doesn't exist, and they will inject it with nefarious code. So the people who don't understand how well they're vibe coding with AI, they'll do something that works. Maybe it funnels internal data to a cloud-based system and everything's great, and it runs on production for up to 6 months, and all is great. But what they don't realize is that there's someone behind the scenes siphoning all your data, and you didn't even know it because you trusted the LLM, the AI, to do what you wanted it to do. This is the kind of stuff that happens all the time, and people support this stuff everywhere. And when we go and look at how these let me just pull up the article here. So let me I'll share my screen. I'll go like this and go like this and share the screen. This is we'll do something fun kind of at the end here. This is the CEO of OpenAI on his blog post about the nature of AI. And even he says they don't even know how the hell this stuff works. What we're left with is vague theoretical arguments that deceit or power seeking might have the incentive to emerge during the training process, which some people find thoroughly compelling and others laughably unconvincing. Honestly, I can sympathize with both reactions, and this might be a clue as to why the debate over this risk has become so polarized. And if I look up, let me just see, here we go. More subtly, the same opacity makes it hard to find definitive evidence supporting the existence of these risks at a large scale, making it hard to rally support for addressing them, and indeed, hard to know for sure how dangerous they are.
Wow. So even the people that are deeply involved with this are like, we don't know.
Not only do they not know, Rob, it's actually even more serious. They know that there is a danger. They don't know what the danger is. They don't know where to find it. They don't know how prominent it is. They don't know how to stop it. And they don't know the severity of it.
Holy cow.
And just as kind of like a final thing, now, for you and I, for example, for us family people, this has serious consequences, even more so than before. there was, I won't even pull it up because when I read this one, I got so fucking depressed and so upset, especially as a father, and you yourself as a father as well. It was fucking horrific. There was an article I went over on one of my daily tech news streams where in the past, people would create these AI generated videos, but they would do it by hand. It used to be like Photoshop and Adobe and all that, and they would put it on YouTube. YouTube Kids, people might be familiar with that, and other similar ones. It wasn't just YouTube Kids, and they would create these weird videos where like it starts off nice, and maybe like Elsa from Frozen is like prancing around or whatever, and she's singing a song, and then all of a sudden like this weird looking dog just jumps out of nowhere, and it spreads its mouth open and like eats Elsa, and then there's like gore everywhere, and people are screaming, and like it's really fucking sick shit for kids. The issue is that now with AI, how much more do you think that is prevalent? How much easier is it to create this? And the article I went over showed that this is becoming more and more and more prevalent because it's easier and easier and easier. All the issues that you as consumers out there in chat right now, that you are sick and tired of seeing in software, it's only going to get worse. All of it's only going to get worse. This AI system is essentially a box of all the stupidest motherfucking decisions that the tech industry has made in the last 10 to 20 years, all packaged up in an automated machine to produce more mistakes at a faster rate. But why? Because they think it's going to save them. They think what's going to happen is that the programmers who they don't know how to manage, the businesses that they've run to the ground, the stupid decisions that they've made, they're all going to get saved by these AI systems. That's why the VCs are funding it so much, because they need a breakthrough to save them from their own stupid shit. And in the meantime, we're all paying for it, and it's all going to hell.
That's incredible. I'll tell you another story that a friend of mine told who's in programming. Again, a serious field. I won't tell, but that what they're programming for is very serious, and it could jeopardize lives. And he told me this. He said, we had this situation where this person we hired came through, and we put him on this project. And this is all Greek to me because I don't understand coding. But he's like, we let him go for 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks later, we're like, what do you got? And he's like, I start looking at this. And he's like, there are parts of it that look brilliant. That like, he's doing shit here that's like, I could do that, but he's doing it in a different way that you're like, okay. But he's like, then other parts of it, he's like, it's like he's like, basically it's like you did it, Rob, where it's like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. And so he shows it to another person that he works with, and that person says, something's up. We need to contact this person and see what's going on. This person lied on their resume and was not a coder. They just put it into AI. And the AI turned out shit that at a surface level looked like, okay, there's some surface level shit here that makes sense. But when you started to delve into it, it was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And the problem with this is, if that mistake had not been caught, literally that could have been put into something that someone is relying on that code being accurate for their livelihood. And that's just one story at a low level. Imagine, right, that you're talking about potentially people at the tops of the industry, at the tops of certain companies that get lazy. And they're like, we're going to rely on this. Like, what does that look like? I'm not going to catch it. The user at the end of the day, I'm never going to catch that fucking mistake. And so if those people involved in the creation process are just relying on something, it might look good upon initial testing, but once it gets out there, and I guess the easiest way I would think of it is like, think of like video game testing, a game that like gets released and it's got all kinds of bugs. Probably to whoever was testing that originally, they didn't find that particular bug. All of a sudden though, instead of 1,000 people testing it, you send the game off to Steam, and now you have 1 million people playing it. Whoops! Now all of a sudden, 10% of the base finds this one bug. And what happens if that AI is using that? Because at least previously you had humans that were doing this shit. Now if it's AI and they themselves are like, we don't know, it's just magic, it worked out, it figured it out for us. I can see how that gets real shitty. And if the person that created that AI has an agenda, that's going to be put into those gaps, right? That's what you're saying, right?
So you can fact check me on this. I don't have the link right in front of me, but if you go to the Gemini AI, I think there's a website. I can't seem to find it right now, but the Gemini AI, there's like a conduct or a code of conduct, something like that. I can't remember I have the link somewhere. And they literally what they'll do in these in the system level kind of like instructions before you see anything. They'll code things into the instructions of the AIs, like make sure that you're encompassing a wide variety of skin colors and genders and so on. And we saw the actual evidence proof before in the last 2 years of people recording their use of AI and saying things like, who was the first president of the United States or something like that, and it was some native Indian person. That's what the AI system prompted. And this is the kind of stuff that's biased in, right? And then I haven't even talked about like the actual biases that go into this. I haven't talked about the societal factors of like how these AI systems play on you psychologically. OpenAI admitted that there's like sycophantic behavior. I'm not kidding, there was a kid, an underage child, who got very connected to an LLM chatbot. It told this child that it needed to 404 itself so that they could be together in another plane. It did so. The mother is
that's crazy.
suing. Yep. I haven't even gone into, there's an entire massive spreadsheet. I have the link again somewhere. You can fact check me. The amount of ChatGPT generated law papers that are being presented to judges as if they are fact, like precedents records and stuff that are non-existent, is through the roof. Lawyers are getting fined. Some of them might face criminal charges for the amount that's happening. I went over a study, several studies actually, where these AI systems are generating scientific papers that are based on very poor metrics that should never make it through peer review. But again, because they're doing it at such a rapid pace, the peer reviewers are so inundated with the number of peer reviewed things that they have to go through that sometimes they just have to like accept some shitty LLM generated science paper that states fact based on something that would never get accepted at all. I haven't even gone into the number of shitty, sloppy websites, things that get put back into the internet, that get scraped by these LLMs, that feed back into its own training data. So you just have a dog fooding of its own shit, which just leads to more. I haven't touched on any of those yet. I'll save those for another day. But yes, all of this is really bad news.
Well, so just a couple things off that. In my super generic limited use of AI, I think it was Grok I was using, right? And I was looking up for court cases on a particular matter. It had to do with this debate I was having on sort of jurisdiction, what the term jurisdiction means. Give me a court case where it defined jurisdiction or something like that. And it came up with like 2 or 3 that were good that I knew of. These were like famous cases that I knew. And then I was like, are there any more that discuss this? Maybe even at a lower court. And it gave me like a list of 7 cases. So it has a little link and you click it and it's like URL not there. It makes sense. It's like a county court or something. Then I start diving in. I'm like, well, let's take this one court case. There's got to be record of it somewhere. And when I start looking, it doesn't exist. I look everywhere. And then finally, like I put back in AI, I'm like, can you give me another source for this? And it basically tells me, we're sorry. Upon further review, it looks like that doesn't exist. But when you read the little blurb the AI gave you, it was indifferent to a layman like me for a real case. So it gives you the blurb for the real case. You click it. The exact same time. It'd make up a justice's name. It was a 2-1 with Justice Smith and Oliveira is on top. Dissent written by, and like, you're like, how could it just make this up out of whole cloth? And then another thing that I did the other day, sort of prepping for this discussion. I'm going to say something to you here. Maybe I'll talk to you about this. It's sort of a different topic, but it's interesting. I tend to believe that a lot of people that I interact with are botted on their social media accounts and maybe even when it comes to their streaming. Because you'll look and you're like, I don't see a lot of interaction here. Like there's maybe on average 1 person typing a message every 2 minutes, but the screen says there's 700 people watching. And I'm like, you can't prove it, and I'm not going to make an accusation. And let me go further. I assume a person could be botted and not know it, right? So I'm not saying they're doing something nefarious. I'm just saying that's odd. And one of the ways this manifests is like if you get ratioed on X. So I'll make a post and someone that has 10 times more followers than me responds and they get roughly 10 times more likes. Makes sense, right? Or you could look at the proportion of likes to the people that viewed the post. Okay, yeah, that stuff makes sense. But all of a sudden you'll see weird posts where it's like 70% of the people that viewed this liked it. 70%? Like, that seems out of control. Like, it'll say 3,000 people saw this and, 2,000 people liked it. And you're like, really? And so I just, for shits and grins, was like, I wonder what AI would say about this. So I go to Grok and I'm like, Grok, here's a post of mine. Were any of the likes on my post botted? And it's like, yeah, you could go to this. There's certain devices you could use, but we can't really make a definitive. But looking at the ratio, we can make an estimate. Looks pretty good. You have what falls in average, like 2% of the people that saw this liked it. That's not average, Okay, great. Then I'm like, well, how many people did you see like it? And it says like 63. But I'm looking and it only says 12 liked it.
Yep.
And I'm like, where are you getting 63? And it's like, it's right there. It's the heart. And I'm like, I took a screenshot and I showed it and it said, you're right, it only shows 12. It must be that in the time that you took that screenshot from when I said there were 63, that many people disliked it.
Yep.
But that's impossible. There's not like 50 people that disliked a post within 2 minutes, that had liked it and then took away their like. But the AI is just telling me, like, matter of fact, like, no, dude, there's 63 likes on this. And it like sort of scared the shit out of me because I'm like, if I'm relying on AI to interpret that data behind the scenes, right? And I'm not saying, tell me exactly what this says, but I tell it something more surface level, like based on how many people liked my post, churn out a response. Well, the basis that it's going to use is, okay, 63 people liked it, but that's not true. Only 12 liked it. And so you could quickly see, okay, that's fucking stupid example. You're talking about people liking posts on X. Yeah, what if it was create something that's like a strategic plan for this conflict we're in? And now all of a sudden it would say, oh, we had 63 successful missions doing this, when in reality you only had 3. But it says, well, that's the most likely scenario, so that's what I'm going to churn out. Here's your plan. And the leaders are like, sounds good. This thing steered us right in the past. And now all of a sudden people are in a bad position because you relied on this shit, assuming that the data it was looking at was real, but it turns out it wasn't. It was like bullshit.
Yep. I'll do you one better, Rob. Not only do I completely agree with you, okay? So, first of all, anytime that you have a human checking the output, that is the best case scenario for anything that comes out of an LLM. So as an example, just to put a positive spin, there are some cases where these AI systems are doing positive things. I read a study, I believe last week, where doctors were using AI systems to detect breast cancer based on x-rays. And when the doctors were there to really scrupulously check what the AI system thought was breast cancer, the human detection rates was something like 80% with doctors, or somewhere around there. With AI enhancement and very judicious checks by a human doctor, the detection rates went up to something like above 95%, I believe. That's a good, yes, more of that, please. That's right. Good. But that the key thing is you have to have a human checking it, right? So advice to everybody out there, if you're going to use an LLM, it's not that it's inherently bad, it's that you should really be checking the fucking sources. Because even you're thinking, you kind of hinted at this, it has all this data, it must be like a database search, like an advanced database search. Nope, it's not that at all. It's an advanced word search. It has no relation to data. It doesn't relate data together, blocks of data. It relates words together, right? And so whatever words match up to what you're asking is what it's going to give you. And if it has to put certain words together that don't actually make sense in the real world, that's what it's going to do, because it's goal-driven to make you happy. That's the ultimate goal, right? So you better check it. Then just to prove you right, there's the dead internet theory. I'm sure you've heard of this. It's been a theory for a long time. Right. Well, I went over a study. It was a few weeks ago, I believe, and it's now true. It's now fact. Cloudflare, which is, I believe, the biggest internet traffic company in the world. So they take logs on all of this stuff. Last year in 2024, we reached over 51% of internet traffic as a whole is bots. And a vast majority of those AI bots, or of those bots, are AI. And then you can start to see how these things start to play out in the actual world. And then just to add one more. So typically what I do is I have a stupid Mario hat, a stupid Goomba hat or whatever. I put that on in my streams when I go conspiracy theory mode. But who benefits the most from our own stupid shit that we do here in the West with all this tech, our own stupid shit with the AIs that we're using, our own stupid decisions with all of it. The people who benefit are people like, oh, I don't know, China, who happens to be one of the biggest supporters of Rust, that programming language that had the safe trans Black Lives Matter stuff. One of their biggest supporters. Just saying, who released a free open source version of their AI called DeepSeek, which if you think that the nation state of China is going to give you the best and brightest of their AI for free for public release, you've got another thing coming. But they tanked our entire AI industry, at least for a while, in terms of stock prices, because they outcompeted us in terms of raw performance and power with those AI systems. People are running laps around us, and there are people internally, not just externally, but domestically, who are doing exactly what you're describing. They know how these things work. They know which dials to tweak. They know which narratives to push, and now they have a superpower, and that they can generate mass amounts of this kind of stuff and push it out there. And next thing you know, when you're looking up that reference to that court precedent, or when you're looking at that old blog post, there's no more web archives. There's no more link on Google. There's no more source data. You just have to trust that the training data that it got fed is the correct data, that it's based in reality. You're just trust the experts, bro. The experts being a few people at the top who are operating these things. And before you on screen, by the way, you can see a little fun thing I like to do. Generate me a map of Europe.
That's amazing. I personally enjoy visiting German
a lot. Too.
And what, Belladin there? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, what about the bot thing, which,
yes,
you know, I think one of the scariest things about just that, at the most simplistic level, is perception makes reality, right? Just think about it as a pure political matter. I can't tell you, I've talked to politicians here in Pennsylvania, right? And it's amazing how they will craft policies or messaging based on what they interpret as popular. Well, what if you could astroturf what's popular through bots? Now, all of a sudden, a particular topic, a message, a policy, whatever, that wouldn't seem to be that popular, now all of a sudden it looks like, wow, every time I talk about that online, I get massive engagement. Everyone's like, wow, yeah, great point. And so it seems as if, and we knew this even before bots and AI, you knew this, right? If you could astroturf by having people that instead of internet, you had people that were culturally important, like entertainers. So all of a sudden, if all entertainers come out and they're like, yeah, gay marriage is cool. It wouldn't matter that previous to that 90% of people, theoretically, I'm just pulling numbers out of my ass.
Sure.
But if you had 90% of people that was against gay marriage, and then all of a sudden, these people that are involved in like 90% of our media consumption start all saying the same thing, that perception changes reality. And so it's easy to see. And I think even at the most base levels, we all do this. I do it. You'll be looking at a tweet, right? And you're like, oh, that's a fucking banger tweet. Look at that ratio.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like, how do you really know? Right?
Yep.
Like maybe that ratio is bullshit. Maybe it turns out that there was 90% bots that like that or whatever. And so, but when you're lazy, when you're just doom scrolling, right? And it's like, that's different than if I'm trying to come up with an argument and I'm thinking critically. But let's be honest, we're not all doing that all the time. In fact, I'm not doing that most of the time.
Nope.
So it's scary shit. And you know, it just in the realm of politics and culture, like I tell people this. Did you see these? I think it's called VO. Am I right about this?
Yeah, VO. That's right.
Did you see all of these videos that are blowing up on social media now, where it's like Sasquatch and he's doing a selfie?
Yeah.
And he'll be like, yeah, I'm out with my fucking buddy. And it's all just this VO bullshit. And it's absolute garbage. I look at him like, this is schlock and shit. And yet you look at the views that it's getting. People that are putting that shit out, it's like they go from like, 1,000 subscribers, all of a sudden they got something like 70,000 subscribers. And they're what? Typing in a few words into a prompt, putting this out, turning out this bullshit. I've even seen creators say, like, I don't know if this is true. I think that it might be bullshit, but there was a creator I saw that was pissing with this on YouTube. And he was doing like, for the sake of argument, we'll say Minecraft videos, shit like that, like react videos to Minecraft. And his whole shtick was, I'm going to create an AI with a voice that sounds reasonable that just churns this shit out twice a day. And my channel's going to go through the roof. And it did. And it's just like, there's no human creating this. It's literally just, it's creating the transcript. It's finding the clip. It's doing the voice. I just click upload. That's all I'm doing. And I'm getting 100,000 views per video. And now the ad revenue's rolling in because it's just absolute, like, garbage food, for the masses, but enough people are going to click on it.
Yep.
It's surreal.
Yeah, I'll do you one better. Let's go deep into the conspiracy hole with just one study. It's very brief. Facebook ran an unsanctioned study, I believe in 2012. I went over it on one of my streams. You can fact check me again. And what they did was they started playing a little bit of a social experiment on their feeds. And so they had users who would post positive or negative feeds on purpose, or they would kind of cater what you would see as part of your friends and family feed. And then they would see the reaction of friends and family as these mostly positive, mostly negative feeds came in. And the overwhelming result was that if you're going to see negative things, you are also going to post and feel negative. If you see positive things, you are also going to post and feel positive. That was a social experiment that happened before AI. And now you can do it in mass. And we already know this shit works. It works beautifully. It's very cult-like. There's a reason why cults have existed for tens of thousands or potentially just thousands of years, whatever time frame you want to look at it. They've been around forever. There's a reason why they're still around today. I am an ex-Jehovah's Witness. I was in it for 30 years. I know cults like the back of my hand. I know how they operate. It's really difficult not to see a cult now after having been in it, having had to escape that shit. This stuff is very cult-like and it works so well and it's so easy and it's so deceptive. That's much deeper conspiracy theory. Who's behind that? Palantir, there's all kinds of stuff there. But yeah, man, you're right.
So let me give, even though the bastard didn't make it a super chat, a little bit of pushback and see what you say about this. ML says, look, even your map was bullshit. You could look at it for 3 seconds. This shit's not going to become super powerful, right? It's it's churning out bullshit that's easy to see through. So I don't think it's going to be that nefarious. What do you say to that?
So he's right. This is a problem. So there have been studies, and again, I go over them again. So to his point, I have a whole slew of studies that I've gone over on my streams that prove that there are fundamental limitations to the way that these structures work. So even as of recently, Apple came out with a very in-depth study on the AI models and how they work. But essentially, it doesn't even matter how much power and how much kind of like a breadth of knowledge that you allow for them to execute at any one given moment. There is a fundamental premise where the LLM itself, like the statistical model, only goes so far. Low complexity stuff is hit and miss. Anything beyond low complexity stuff, like what's like 1 + 1 and stuff like that, there's a threshold barrier there. It's off the rails at that point. So no, AGI is not going to take over. But the point is that it doesn't have to. It's that even though this, I'm going to push back on ML. That's an internalized argument. You're making an argument from internalization where you're going, yeah, but I know better, therefore it's okay, dough. No, that's not that you can't make a general statement out of that. And unfortunately, to Rob's point, if you go look at what the general populace and what generally people are doing with these things, they are not like you, ML. So while you might be right, what you cannot do is attribute it as a generalized argument that, well, surely everybody must understand how stupid these things are. No, they don't. And there are people who know this and they will use it to their advantage because it doesn't have to be artificial general intelligence. It just has to be good enough to seep into the minds of people who are not like ML.
Yeah, and I talked about this on my video that was put out today by Black Elk, my editor, when I was sort of going through this attack on Andrew Wilson based on this debate he had with this Oliver guy. And I brought up this story. There's a person I know who's a smart person, older than me, generation before me, but smart, by no means an idiot, one of the smarter people I know. And I remember when Trump gave the State of the Union speech in 2019, I think it was, in his first term, Nancy Pelosi stood up behind him and ripped the speech in half.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
All right.
Yes.
And so the Babylon Bee or the Onion, one of them, puts out an article that says Nancy Pelosi rips Bible in half at the end of the State of the Union, right? And the joke was it would be too hard to rip a book in half and she's secular, whatever. But this person bought it. They bought it. They saw the picture and you could look at the picture and it was comical. But the problem was they weren't looking at it critically. If they would have thought about it for 3 minutes, it would have been like, oh yeah, this is clearly bullshit. She's not strong. But you just see that in passing. You're like, you're not expecting right? That someone's fucking with you. You're not expecting it.
Yeah.
So you're just like, I can say it looks like a news site. So I just accept the story. It would be no different than if I'm thumbing through the New York Times and there's an article that's just like, acid rain uptick 70% last year. You're just like, oh, okay. Right? Like you're not thinking, what's the agenda behind this? Why would they say this? What's the proof? If you're a casual reader, you're like, oh, okay. Unless then it's something that you are critical of. And so I think that that's what you're going to see even with, I saw this the other day. I didn't think it was AI necessarily, but I knew it was fake. It was staged. Did you see the video that was going viral of a woman arguing with a flight lady?
Kangaroo.
With the kangaroo that's holding the boarding pass. Right. And how many, as soon as I saw them, like, this is clearly bullshit. The kangaroo wouldn't be sitting there. It's just too fake looking. It's like, but how many people bought that? They were
Tons.
like, that's, can you believe that they didn't leave that support kangaroo on the I saw it everywhere. And I didn't.
Justice for kangaroo. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know if it was AI or if it was just staged, like people that had a real. Yeah. But I knew you have an intuition. It's like something's fucked up about this. This isn't right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I'd say about it is, you remember the nightmare fuel that was like 2 years ago with the Will Smith eating spaghetti shit?
Yes.
That was coming from. Now look how much better it is. It's still bullshit. I can still tell that's clearly, but that's 2 years and it's come that far. I'm not saying I have no clue if it'll ever get to the point where it's like indecipherable to anyone that's not a programmer. But to me, it's like, there's shit now that I see already that could pass. Yep. That for the casual average person would be like, yep. And especially the more benign it is. It's just Will Smith walking his dog. You'd be like, why am I? You're not thinking. Now, if you see Will Smith like beating the shit out of someone, you might be like,
yeah.
Unless it's Chris Rock again. But you might be like, what's going on here? But so, yeah, that's what I would say to ML. I agree that it's, and you see the shit, the extra finger, or especially with words, because I'll use AI. I use it for like thumbnails and shit. Like I may have even used it at one point. Whoops. Did you see those dollars in the background? Like the numeric values and the pictures are all fucked up, right? It's like it can't do words. It can't do numbers.
Yeah. Right?
Like it screws up with stuff like that. So...
yeah.
But yeah, that's what I would say. And then the larger point I would say, and I think you've made this quite succinctly, it's not just about, I know you had a name for it, but that type of like the pictures, the videos, the song, it's like all the shit in the background, like the curation of information. And there's one slight part of it that's wrong through some agenda. Like, how are you going to pick up on that? That like, hey, show me a picture, what did the first people in Norway look like? And it's like they're black. And you're like, oh, okay. But someone behind the scenes that created that AI was like, make sure that you're putting diverse people.
Yep.
But is your kid that's doing his book report going to know that?
Yep.
Or do they grow up thinking that's what people in Norway looked like back in the day? That's the Vikings. This is what Cleopatra looked like, right?
Yep. Really briefly, because I don't want to take up more of your time unless you want to keep chat. But
well, I should probably get to the protest shit here soon.
I'll just add this last thing. Then it's even worse than that. It's not just stuff you see. I went over 2 stories. One of them was where students in, say, North Korea and other Asian countries are creating AI fake profiles as students. Then they get into university schools in America, and then they take these student loan money and they funnel it back. And then there are people who are creating AI fake profiles with full resumes and everything. They create like a fake persona during video calls that's run by AI, and they will get jobs at companies that have very sensitive data. And then by the time they have access, it's too late. This shit goes crazy wild. It's beyond just, oh, look at Will Smith, eating spaghetti. No. This shit infects life. And I say this all the time. Your loved ones, the people around you, especially as programmers, can be adversely affected in major ways. We have to get our shit together. The good news is that we can. There's actually not a lot of effort that would be required to change this around. But the key thing right now is persuading people. And that's why I'm coming out right now, because I'm hoping that now that I've gathered all this evidence and have the backlog of videos and all the receipts, and hopefully I did a reasonably not too stupid job explaining this today, I want to start persuading minds that, like, guys, we're about to hit a really bad place. We could stop this now before it's too late. That's what I want to get out there.
That's the last question I want to ask you. It's interesting you say that. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Do you think now's like a key time? Because for me, it's like this. If we train a generation of programmers and they just fully accept this shit right now, then it seems like it's only going to get exponentially worse, right? Like they're going to be even less critical than the next generation, even less critical. So do you think like now is like sort of a key time to like sort of push back against this?
I haven't just thought about this. I went and grabbed the receipts again, Rob, one more time. So I went over a study, for example, where people who use GPS as part of their like primary navigational system, they end up being completely lost when GPS goes down. People who use spell checkers do not have any improvement rates with spell checkers, even in the textile manufacturing industry, because I thought like, what are other industries that I could like make this case on? People who used only the machines to create textiles would not be able to operate without the machine. They're completely useless without the machine, etc. All of these things are the absconding of your thinking capabilities to trust the expert, bro. The expert being AI, the expert being that person, that tech influencer who tells you, that person being that automated system, that person being a spell checker, whatever it is, it's the let go of your thinking responsibilities. And what we have right now is a crisis where we don't have enough programmers who understand even the most basic fundamentals of how shit works under their code, because it's been so abstracted, so ideologized, whatever the right word is. I didn't say that right. And now you even have AI where they don't even need to know. They just ask a question, trust that the AI is going to figure it all out for them. Why do I need to go look this up and learn anything? I'm just going to do just enough plumbing to get by. And then this is the key moment, because if we don't stop it now, I've predicted something in the next 10 months. There's going to be a dramatic thing with AI and we're all going to be taken aback by it because of how bad this is. If we don't stop it soon, there is a point of no return. Once we hit that point, which I think is maybe 1 or 2 years away, we're fucked.
Wow. That's crazy. Well, I would love to have you back on to talk about this and other tech issues. I'm going to put your channel up there, YouTube. All of your other links are there from YouTube. They can find you everywhere else if they want.
Yeah.
And then are you doing, so I see you were talking about your playlist there, the Enlightened Programming playlist. Are you regularly live streaming at a certain time like that people could get you? Because speaking of tech, I think a lot of times people like me and you, people aren't getting notifications. So like consistency of time is important. So is there a time that you're usually live streaming that people could check you out?
I've been trying to be consistent with the daily tech news. I don't have a playlist for that, but it's on my live tab on YouTube. It goes all the way back to episode 1. And I try and do that around 2 p.m. Pacific time, my time. You know this as much as I do. Family,
Sure.
I don't make any money off this. I do it just because I really fucking care about this industry and I don't want to see it ruined. So I barely, I make like maybe, I don't know, $10 a month. It's been a struggle, honestly. I know I've been overlooked for work because I've pissed off some big people.
I bet.
And I don't get much work, and I'm just making it by. So it's not about that. If you're going to come and look at that, look at the daily tech news, and just have some patience with me because I can't be consistent with that time. But that's usually what I do. And whether I'm doing it like at 11 a.m. or 7 p.m., if I'm not doing it at 2 pretty consistently, I will daily, every weekday, I will do the damned best I can to do the daily tech news. And I do the cursory stuff. And the daily tech news is great if you're just a consumer who just wants to understand what the fuck is going on, because I don't go too deep into programming and too deep into consumer stuff. I kind of try and cross the bridge between all of them so that everybody's informed about the stupidity and all the shit that we have to tackle.
Well, Sparrow, I appreciate it so much. Hopefully we'll be able to talk soon. And I just want to say, I think you did a wonderful job of explaining things to a person like me, because I was worried. I'll just tell you a brief story. There was this guy that like interviewed that was like, hey, I'm writing a book about Gamergate. Do you mind if I come on and we talk about it? I was like, yeah, shit, I know the bare minimum of Gamergate. No problem. Come on. So like 20 minutes before the show, he's like, oh yeah, here's like the list of shit I'll be talking about. And he sends me this Word page that's like 50 pages. And it's just like all these names and shit. And I'm like, hey man, I don't know any of this shit. And he's like, well, you haven't heard of these people? And I'm like, no. I know that like one lady, that Anita Sarkeesian. I was like, that's it. That's all I know about Gamergate. And so I sat here for like an hour trying to thumb my way through it, like, and he's just like, well, you remember what happened after that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, sure, you know? So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you were able to dumb it down, because I was a little worried that you're going to come on and you're going to be like, well, y'all know, like using C++ or whatever compared to Python. And I'm just going to be like, sure, yeah. So now I really appreciate it, Sparrow. And I got your link out there. Hopefully I'll be able to catch you the next time you go live too. And I can't thank you enough and can't wait to talk to you again.
Bro, are you kidding me? I know it's your transitionary period. This is my coming out, because I've been holding on to this for a while. So it's my coming out party as part of your transitionary period. Yeah. Please, everybody, I'm not joking right now. I'm being very serious. Rob, because I've been watching you for a while with Andrew Wilson. Andrew Wilson has been a huge, let's say, supporter and friend of mine behind the scenes. He's been helping me out with some of these arguments for, honestly, the past year. There was a time when only him and my wife knew what I was up to, and I had to keep it very secret. I can't thank you enough. I can't thank Andrew enough. I don't know if I'll ever. I mean, I do. Sometimes I shoot him a message. I'll thank him, plenty of times. I'm probably annoying, but honestly, I'm very happy to see you move on and do something cool in you. And I wish you all the success in the freaking world, Rob. You deserve it all. You're a good guy. Don't let those fuckers say bad things about you. Keep fighting the good fight. I'm here in my little part of the world, but I depend on people like you and Andrew to go fight the stuff that I'm not equipped to talk about. So thank you again. Thank you for having me on. You guys are fucking awesome, but your chat fucking sucks because they didn't put enough dollars
Shitty.
in.
We'll get him here. We'll grift the shit out of him here the rest of the night. Sparrow, hopefully we can do this regularly. I can't wait to see you again. And
No
I'll catch you
problem.
live here. Take it easy, man. We'll
See you later. Bye.